Hi and welcome. I'm Paul Bojarski, the CEO of Sceenic, and today I've been invited by Example IT to interview none other than Alan, my good friend Sarah, and Christo from YEO Messaging. We're going to dive into a topic why every corporate organization should be using secure messaging and hear from them what aspects of messaging the corporates need. So look, I'm going to dive right in and let them introduce themselves.
Hi Paul, I'm Alan and I'm the CEO and co-founder of YEO Messaging.
Hi Paul, I'm Sarah. I'm also a co-founder and CMO of YEO Messaging.
Paul, Christo Conidaris, Chief Revenue Officer, CRO for YEO Messaging.
Wow, so we've got the whole gang here and I'm going to dive straight in, okay? So loads of organizations, like mine, use Teams and Slack. But, why is it that we need a secure corporate messaging for us?
So I'll take that one, Paul. It's a great question. So, one of the advantages I have is being the CRO at YEO is I get the opportunity to meet with a lot of corporate customers across different verticals. And when I go into those meetings with the chief security officer or the IT director, and I have a discussion with them about messaging, sort of the first question I pose is, in your day-to-day work as the IT director or the CSO, have you ever used a consumer-grade application like WhatsApp or Telegram or Signal as a technology to discuss business items? And almost 90% of the time, what people turn around to me and as I say is, yes, we do. So the reality of the situation is if you look at corporate messaging, people are using consumer-grade messaging applications when they should be using those traditional technologies like Teams and Slack. And there's a number of reasons for that, and predominantly the main reason for that is user adoption. And the reality is people find it very difficult to use technologies like Slack and Teams on their mobile phone. In today's environment, people are on the move. They're on their mobile phone all the time. They're not using their desktop, which is what Teams and Slack have, predominantly been built for. And these technologies, those consumer applications, and I like to call them consumer, because they're not built for business, come with risks. And these risks are, evident, and we see it day to day in the news with, even the ex-Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He got caught out. Christian Horner in Formula One, he got caught out. And we see lots and lots of these stories.
Oh, it even happened to me. On the recent flight to Argentina, there was a stopover in Rio de Janeiro. They had to check our passports and boarding passes again. And you know what the lady from the airport did? She took a photo of my passport and opened up WhatsApp, and I quickly saw the name of the group, which said Rio de Janeiro Airport Workers. She put my passport photo on there and sent it to 300 members.
Wow.
Terrible.
Right?
Yeah,
I immediately said withdraw that, but it was too late.
Yeah.
So you're right. They're using daily messaging that they're used to in a corporate environment.
Yeah. And I think at a high level, you can divide these core issues that affect the corporate in three core areas. The first issue is around compliance. So in your situation, that photo is not sitting on Rio de Janeiro's IT platform. It's actually sitting on whoever that consumer-based application server is, and
On their phone, most importantly.
Exactly, yeah, exactly that. So that's the first problem, is this whole issue around compliance and managing compliance. And here in Europe, particularly in the UK, that would be a GDPR issue. Because now your information, which could have been your passport photo, your ticket, all of those things that should be kept confidential, again, are not sitting on or under the control of the corporate website, and who knows what's going to happen to that data.
And that group with 300 people could have some ex-workers who have left
exactly
the Rio de Janeiro airport, but they're still on that WhatsApp group. So Yeah.
Now there's
Exactly.
going to be a Paul Bojarski in Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah. But the thing is everybody, it comes back to compliance. So we use Slack, we use Teams for compliant collaboration tools. But we use consumer-based, or most corporations that Christo's witnessed, use consumer-based applications because of ease of use and suitability to a mobile environment. We want the instancy of messaging, but our corporations want compliance, regulatory approval, backup, etc. And they certainly don't want their corporate gifts and secrets walking out the door on that mobile phone. So I think the obvious thing is user behavior. Your employees want products that make their life easier. And we all demand the instancy of messaging.
Yeah. So at the end, Paul, what YEO is really about is providing a fully authenticated messaging network in a very, very secure invite-only platform. So therefore, making sure, as Alan pointed out, is that we're protecting all of the data associated in that messaging scenario, but also at the same time, making sure that you have a group of people that you want on that secure messaging platform that are invited to that platform.
So I want to touch on the topic of like messaging mistakes in today's world, and like why are they so dangerous in the corporate world?
I love that question. Control, control, control. Very simple. Messaging today, everybody thinks, oh, it's great, it's encrypted. But what about your keystrokes? What about the information you put into that messaging before you send it? And then what about control of the content? Because basically with messaging today, or most packages outside of YEO, you lose control the moment you hit send. You have no idea who is going to actually read that. You're delivering to a device, not a human being.
And with YEO, you authenticate the face, is
yes.
that right?
Yeah, we do on a continuous basis, so Paul. It's not a case of just entering and opening the phone. And so it's not a session-based authentication. It's continuous, so real time. We know that if I send a message to Paul, only Paul can view it.
Right.
And
so if my daughter picks up the phone, it will know she's not Paul, even though it's Paul's device.
Yeah. So the message is on my terms, not yours. So you'll be looking at it. If you want to show it your wife or your colleague or whatever, the moment you turn the device, the message will obfuscate. So no other package in the world today, to our knowledge, actually has that capability.
And we're going to sell it to Rio de Janeiro airport, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Paul,
Absolutely.
Paul, it even gets worse when you consider how we're moving more into this AI world. So more and more messaging applications are integrating AI as a mechanism to help you construct messages and help you answer messages in the most efficient manner. So the initial sell of instant messaging, as Alan pointed out, was, we have this encrypted platform, and because it's encrypted, it's secure. But now what they're doing is say, well, we're going to add this little circle and it's going to help you construct your messages. And what that really means is it's actually going to read every message. So this whole philosophy of encryption really is going to help you in eavesdropping, but not really in privacy.
Yeah.
And where we are heading to as a technology provider is really to take privacy as the top priority and making sure that we control that messaging flow between individuals within that messaging platform.
But there's also the ownership of the data.
Yeah.
These consumer grade applications, they store all the data on the phone. So the person leaving your company walks out with all that data. Yeah. You have no way to mitigate risk at all. And they're open systems. They rely on identification through a mobile phone number. And we all know that if we walk into a particular environment and you have WhatsApp, anybody can connect. Yeah. So your cyber risk is extremely high. And I believe, Sarah, their stats about 92% of cyber events emanate from finger trouble or human error. And if you're bombarded on open platforms by different inquiries, etc., One day you're going to click on a link or open a voice note or do something that is going to invite somebody to attack your organization.
And then Paul, you gave that great example of being in the airport and with your photo. And we talked a little bit about the fact that the photo is now sitting on a WhatsApp server somewhere. The reality is what people don't consider when using things like WhatsApp, Telegram, and Signal is those are generally systems where all of that data is actually hosted on their servers. The reality is we have this issue which is called data sovereignty. And what that really means is the legislative rules associated with storing data on a server in, let's say, Europe versus America versus Rio de Janeiro versus Middle East and Africa are completely different. They're not the same. So the risk for the corporate is that now all that data that's been communicated over that consumer application, they might not have the legislative reach that they require because that data is now not sitting sovereign in that country that they operate.
I'm really not going to sleep tonight from everything you've told me, because my passport photo is now on a WhatsApp server somewhere in California or wherever that is. So we've just heard from Christo that many employees in corporates are still using consumer messaging apps for the daily work. Like, why is this a compliance nightmare for those businesses?
Well, let's just bring it back a notch. So consumer messaging apps are made for precisely that, for communications between your peers. Business messaging apps obviously have a complete different layer and use model. When people start messaging on these platforms, you can do anything from screenshotting the conversation and sharing it to anybody, to forwarding it on, to copying it. The integrity is at the hands of the person that's holding the device. With consumer messaging platforms, there's no control or oversight of conversations. So no audit, no backup, no way of actually searching into a message thread and looking by keywords or names or anything, which is something that is you definitely need in a business setting. So what we have with YEO Messaging is a way that businesses can have oversight as an admin of the whole conversations throughout their whole business. So anybody that is writing messages in a business setting, you can actually search by keyword, by name, and have complete oversight and audit trail of that conversation.
And isn't it true that was just a thing for industry in restricted areas like finance, healthcare, etc.? But now under the new cyber resilience law that's coming through, all of us have to have that. We have to have the ability to reproduce conversations, to audit backups, etc.
And I think now that everyone is working remotely from home, from the coffee shop, right? I've seen people sitting, and I could easily oversee. And with bring your own device, what are the new messaging risks there?
There's a lot.
So everybody got excited about bring your own device because this meant you could use your technology you were familiar with, you understood, and you could actually use it in the work context. When you start talking about messaging and you talk about corporate messaging and traditional consumer messaging, one of the first things that happens is you get a blurring of these lines, which is what is a business conversation, what is a consumer application. So in actual fact, the whole idea of bring your own device is really blurring those lines between the communications.
Making new corporate risks.
Exactly. Exactly that, Paul.
It makes discipline really, really hard
Very
to apply.
hard. Yeah, exactly.
So you need to ring fence your product that's working on these devices. Otherwise, frankly, you've had it, especially under new regulations.
And then, another really good example I like to talk about in bring your own device is, just in the last couple of weeks, we've heard about Marks and Spencer's being attacked. We've heard about Co-op being attacked, all of these people. And a lot of these people have been attacked because of what is called edge devices. It's all happening either on the mobile or it's happening on the desktop. And of course, because the bring your own device is more vulnerable, it doesn't have all of those protection capabilities that you'd find in a corporate device. That means that opening of that risk on the instant messaging side is even higher than it has been before. And all it takes is one user to click a link or a Trojan to be put into a particular messaging app, and wham bam, your corporate is now affected by a cyber attack, which costs millions and millions of dollars, sometimes even billions of dollars, in order to protect it. So the idea of bring your own device or BYOD devices, really that actually increases the risk and really creates the demand to have, as Alan put it, and Sarah, a specific application specifically built for the mobile and for business, driving that type of usability within the application.
And that kind of brings me to the next question: communication breaches. It's not always the tech, but what role does human error play in those corporate communication breaches that we've seen? It's just human error, right?
It's just huge. Human error is the largest problem in communications. People clicking on the link in the email, or downloading that affected file, or accidentally leaving their phone unlocked on the cafe when they've run to the loo, or whatever it might be. Human error is the largest risk that there is out there.
Or I guess even, I imagine with like, say, you mentioned Co-op and Marks and Spencer, maybe someone asked to be added to a group, nobody authenticated that person, said, oh, it's Alan from IT, I'm
Signal
just joining
gate.
Rob, right? And suddenly there's a new member listening in on all the, so it's human error, communication breaches, where I think with YEO, with your constant facial recognition, that could have been stopped.
So that's exactly why we have continuous facial recognition. We also have an ability to geofence. So if someone within that group chat actually leaves that geofence or that location, they no longer have access to the message.
Wow.
Or, if their face is out of the camera view, they no longer have access to that message.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because somebody talked about this signal gate, and somebody said, well, if Pete Hegseth was using YEO instead of Signal, would that have happened? And the answer actually is no. Everybody's authenticated. Everybody has a profile that's a biometric match to their credentials. So, and also ring fencing. So with geofencing, nobody outside of the White House would have been able to see that message. With an authenticated users, the initials we used of the journalist, they would have automatically highlighted the fact that, why is this guy in this group? It's crazy to use consumer-based applications for any form of confidential data at any time.
Brilliant. Look, and this is a topic my company knows a little bit about, end-to-end encoding video calls and video, but I wanted to go into, there's end-to-end encryption, and there is constant verification of the users, or as you guys call it, real-time user verification, which are two completely different aspects of the game. So why does it matter to have, I know you've touched upon it, but why does it matter? Is it just so my daughter doesn't look up my work files because you're constantly verifying the face?
Yeah, it's a really good point. A lot of people will say to me, well, I use WhatsApp, it's encrypted. I use this, it's encrypted. And the fact is they don't actually understand it. Encryption is protection from A to B. The data that you're getting, and particularly companies like Meta, they're recording the data as you're putting it in before it's encrypted. That's why I was talking to you earlier on, Paul, about my German Shepherd dog puppy. Suddenly Instagram has German Shepherd
stories and
ads and so on. It's because Meta, I've sent a message over a consumer grade application saying I've got a German Shepherd dog.
Okay, so that's end-to-end encryption.
So
now, constant user verification?
Constant user verification is very different. Constant user verification is, as I said right at the beginning, control. I'm sending to Paul. I want Paul to view it. I want Paul I want to know that only you can view.
And if Paul cuts his beard, you still
we still
can
we
detect.
learn. We use AI engines within our biometrics, and so we learn daily. We're absorbing more information. We learn about the changes in your faces, the idiosyncrasies of each individual. So we're able to continually map. And the beauty of that is I know if somebody's sending a confidential document within our business today, and I want Christo and Sarah to view it and nobody else, they cannot forward it, they cannot copy it, they cannot screenshot it, and they cannot show it to any other individual, which is phenomenal. And that's why we started YEO Messaging.
I think the other thing, Paul, is in order to come onto the network, one has to authenticate through their avatar. So the person, before they even join, they have to authenticate, and they'll go through a KYC process,
right,
in order to authenticate. But equally, if somebody lost their mobile device, as an example, the technology through its administration panel has the ability to remove that user or suspend that user and stop all communication on it. So if somebody who had stolen the device tried to use the device, they wouldn't even be able to use the device.
Yeah, because say my phone will be snatched.
Yeah.
But it was unlocked at the point of snatching.
Yep.
So that person probably has a setting of 30 seconds to lock the phone again.
Yeah.
And that person could open, the consumer app and suddenly see some files, just keep it unlocked. But with constant user facial recognition and verification,
it would blow.
It would say, YEO would say, no, this is not the user anymore.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And basically they won't see anything. Is that right,
Right.
Sarah?
So even if someone knows your PIN code or has, figured out how to crack into your phone, even when they open up YEO Messaging, they will still be hit with that continuous facial recognition. And if it's not positively matched with their biometric, they will not see anything.
Didn't we hear something about phones being snatched in London?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And banking apps open.
Yeah, correct.
And the guy just touches the phone so he can maintain the continuity within the app itself. Would never happen with YEO.
Right, which is really, we've almost been touching a lot on the next question as well, which is features like continuous facial recognition and geofencing, help protect sensitive business chat, right? And files. So we've given a few examples.
I think to answer that, I take a little bit of a different angle. YEO wants to be better than the traditional consumer app on the one hand, and we want to be better than the traditional corporate app. So we want to fit in the middle between these two dynamics, the corporate side and the consumer side. So we had to build some uniqueness into our technology, which is the uniqueness that Sarah and Alan have been talking about around facial recognition, geofencing, and we've also got burn after read. But all of these features that we've built in is really to drive the security that people require and the privacy they require. But more importantly, is to try and drive that behavioral change for people to think, oh, I'm about to send this message to you, Paul. What should I do? It happens to be your PIN number for your bank card. Oh, maybe I'm going to enable facial recognition. Or maybe what I'm going to do is make sure that after 3 seconds you've read that message is going to be deleted automatically.
That's called on YEO burn after reading?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So it's these concepts that we've put into our application to change that consumer behavior. Mm-hmm. That's really what we're doing.
Great. So my next question is, okay, I'm a business and I want to become messaging compliant. What would your 3 recommendations be for a business like me to change for tomorrow to be, message secure and compliant?
I think first one, hands down, has to be just stop using consumer messaging apps in your business.
Okay, that's number 1.
That's number 1. I would then like to follow that one up by saying start using a very secure messaging platform like YEO Messaging in your business. And then the third one, I think, is very much around just training your team. Like, people need to know what a attempted cyber attack could look like. whether that's planting emails that, as a test to say, click on this link just to see who clicks on it.
Right.
It's a bit mean, but that's, you need
Go
to
and sign this
you need to
this
train
document
your
online.
employees to notify. And these cyber criminals are getting really smart and doing things that are trying to trick you every single day just so that you make a quick slip up and then bam, they're into their whole business system. So training your staff is a major concern and something people should be focusing on.
Yeah, and the tools actually, like YEO, assist them in that.
Yeah.
It's discipline. Discipline, the right applications and the right discipline.
Great, like what an insightful discussions. Any business owner seeing this video will have some takeaways on what to immediately do. So now looking a little bit ahead, what trends in messaging should business leaders like myself and those that are listening to these videos be preparing for in 2025 and beyond?
So again, it's a question that we get asked quite often. People believe that regulated industries are the only people that need to be compliant across messaging and communications in general. We always get this, we're recording this conversation, etc., when you're dealing with a bank or healthcare and so on. The UK in particular is leading the way with the Cyber Resilience Bill, which is being introduced imminently. And what that means is every company needs to be compliant. Every company will need to maintain records of their communication, but also to demonstrate that they reduce their vulnerability to cyber events, etc. So it's not just for the doctors, the banks, etc. It's for all of us now. Yeah. So that will impact and influence adoption of what we classify as compliant messaging applications, such as YEO Messaging.
Yeah, and I think I've got friends in London who are running businesses, anything from importing wines from Hungary.
Yeah.
And I've seen my friend using those consumer messaging apps to send invoice to logistics companies, the company that's bringing over the wine from Hungary to London. There's addresses on there, there's so much information, there's bank details, PAYE numbers, oh my God, and exactly, there's no geofencing of data, so leaders need to prepare for this.
It takes one click for them to then start listening to all of that information on your mobile.
I think another major trend that people will start looking at more is adding more layers of verification. Obviously, AI is getting smarter. We're having deep fakes. The co-op incident that's just happened recently is actually people joining a video call that aren't verified and infiltrating the system that way. So I think having smarter systems in place to verify people and verify that it's an actual human we're going to see more and more of that happening as well.
Exactly, and me as a small business owner, or my friend with wine, he doesn't have time to be worried about, whether the messaging app that he's using is compliant or not. Yeah. So that just takes away a lot of pain.
Yeah. And then Paul, for me, at the heart of me, I'm a sales guy. So everything for your corporate, you want to look after them. That's what you want to do as a salesperson. You want to sell them technology that's going to look after them. But to me, the biggest thing that affects that small business is reputational damage. Yeah. So, if I'm a big Marks and Spencer's or a big co-op, I've got a big PR department with lots of great Sarahs in it, and they can defend me and they can help on a campaign and resolve that problem. But if you're a small business,
you're destroyed.
You're destroyed. You're over. So that reputational damage is a really key part that goes over and above, the legal requirements that Alan had talked about, and that's another area that people need to consider, which is, can my business afford, a big incident because of messaging?
Yeah, it's not just about privacy and everything. Where we're going in the future is about proof. And with products like YEO, which is, the acronym is for your eye only. At that point, we know who's looking at what, and we can control where they're looking at it. through our geofencing. And we can actually also control how long it's available to be looked at through our burn after reading. And then you go the next layer. When somebody inquires and said, well, did this happen? We can then go to our backup and we can audit the backup and actually give a full response to any inquiry at any time, which is pretty unique. And lastly, what I will say is at all stages, as a YEO customer, you own your data. We're not looking at metadata on your keyboards. It's not like an AI engine where we are ingesting everything
Data.
that's on there and then regurgitating it in some fashion or other. So it's pure, simple, straightforward communications in a user-friendly manner, in a way that we're used to using messaging, but you have all of that compliance wrapper with it and the control of each message.
And obviously video calling, and that's part of communications as
Absolutely.
well. That no strangers joining the video call, Paul just popped up to the loo.
So
but,
even if someone doesn't want to put their, their camera on, they can still be verified, and we still know that is Paul behind that camera. So.
And that's really important because especially if you haven't met the person you're video calling with. I hate that when it's just that little image and you don't actually know who's listening. We prove who's listening because we're sampling at all stages.
And I think I think a few weeks ago there was another public case where someone was interviewing a developer, and they kind of suspected that it was a kind of AI deepfake, and they asked them to raise their hand, and they wouldn't raise their hand because obviously an AI deepfake, I think, can't do that at the point. At this moment, this person said, I've seen the video on LinkedIn, I don't know if it's true or not, and then they said, if you don't raise your hand within 3 seconds, I'm cutting this developer interview. And they didn't, and they stopped the video call. So this is just, 25 and beyond. We've got, obviously new technology, new problems. I want to thank you guys for this really conversation that for me, I've lived through this, so it hits home. Thank you for the time, the insight, and for everybody to learn more about all the special advantages of YEO.
Thank you.
you.
Great questions.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.